Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now, Tyson Fury has spoken about Anthony Joshua once again. He's brung him up in talking about Deontay Wilder and what he believes Deontay Wilder would do to him. He believes that Wilder would knock him out in one round. And he also said that Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn, they're businessmen and he is a Spartan. That is the big difference between those two. Now, it is interesting how Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder as well in the past, they talk about how they don't need Anthony Joshua. He's not on their level. He's the other guy in the heavyweight division. Yet, when they are building up to have a fight, they always talk about him. So if he's the guy who does not bring the numbers, if he's the guy who can have his 5 minutes of fame, as Tyson Fury said, by fighting them, then why do they continuously mention his name if he's the guy who is insignificant in the heavyweight division? That is an interesting question because AJ doesn't do the same unless the interviewer asks the questions. He doesn't talk about Wilder or Tyson Fury unless the question is asked. And the differences with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder is they go out of their way to try and explain how they are the top guys. This is the fight to see who is number one in the division. And Anthony Joshua is not a part of that conversation. The interesting thing though is AJ has fought the likes of Ruiz, Povetkin, he's fought Klitschko, obviously Tyson Fury has as well, but Joseph Parker is in that also, Dillian Whyte at British level, the top 5 heavyweights in the world. Anthony Joshua has been fighting top 5, top 10, and Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, they haven't necessarily done that. So while these guys are fighting one another, they are not going through the heavyweight division facing top challengers back to back. They seem to go from fighting, say, one another, then going and fighting a Tom Schwartz, or for Deontay Wilder, maybe a Dominic Breazeale, who was his mandatory, I guess, so he kind of had to take that fight, even though it should have been Dillian Whyte. That is also down to the WBC, and he also fought Luis Ortiz in and around there somewhere as well. For 2 fights, and I mean, Luis Ortiz hasn't fought any of those guys that Anthony Joshua has faced and beat. He hasn't faced any of them either. So you have to wonder the level of Luis Ortiz. I think that he's a good fighter, but he hasn't really proven it. And that is the operative word. He hasn't proved it. So with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder constantly reminding everyone that they are the ones at the top and trying to explain how Anthony Joshua cannot stick at their level, and Tyson Fury saying that Deontay Wilder would stop him in a single round. He just punches too hard and he's too good. Well, have we seen Deontay Wilder be too good for anyone? He lands a big right hand, yes, but are we expected to believe that Anthony Joshua cannot get to him before Wilder gets to AJ? I mean, it's going to be a standoff. It's going to be difficult for both fighters, and whoever lands first is probably going to get the upper hand. AJ is skillful enough, but also he can put Deontay Wilder under pressure as well. I mean, it's almost like Tyson Fury is acting like AJ cannot do the same as he done in the second fight. He will not do it the same way, but he can have a similar game plan, put Deontay Wilder on the back foot, because he said when he was breaking down the footage when Deontay Wilder knocked out Luis Ortiz the second time, he said that he would not be in there in the 7th round to be able to do that, to land that big shot, the one he is waiting to land, that he always seems to be able to. He would not be around at that time to be able to do it because AJ would get to him before that 7th round, before that big one punch lands. And that is the important thing. So if he knows how to beat him, then he can start forcing Deontay Wilder to go back. And we know that Wilder cannot go back, he can come forwards, but once he's put on the back foot, that right hand becomes even more difficult for him to land. If he cannot land that, then what else can he do? So I do believe that Anthony Joshua can beat Deontay Wilder. I do believe that he can stop him. And I think that it's possible that Wilder can stop AJ. Wilder can stop Fury. This is the heavyweight division. One punch can change everything. But I am not of the belief that Wilder and Fury are this whole other class ahead of AJ, because AJ has proven he can stick around that level, the top of the heavyweight division, face top contenders back to back. I mean, AJ's last 3 fights have been Ruiz, then Pulev, now he's fighting Usyk. For Deontay Wilder, they have been Dominic Breazeale, Luis Ortiz, and then Tyson Fury, and he's fighting Tyson Fury once again. Tyson Fury, it was Tom Schwartz, Otto Wallin, Deontay Wilder, then Deontay Wilder again. So if you look at their resumes, you can see Anthony Joshua is going through top 10 heavyweights back to back, whereas Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, yes, they are facing one another and they've done it twice before, they're doing it for a third time. I mean, why do we need a third fight? Was the second one not conclusive enough for us? So if Deontay Wilder is this other level heavyweight from Anthony Joshua, then how come Deontay Wilder hasn't proven it by facing the guys that AJ has faced in his last 3 or 4 fights? I mean, if you look at the rematches that Wilder has had as well, Bermane Stiverne, he had a rematch against him. Luis Ortiz had a rematch against him, having a rematch against Tyson Fury. Whereas AJ has rematched one person, and that is Andy Ruiz Jr. Aside from that, he's beaten everyone else conclusively enough to prove that there is no rematch needed. So that does tell you all you need to know. At the very least, Anthony Joshua is of the same level. If not, he's proven he is more advanced than, say, Deontay Wilder, just down to his resume alone and the fact that he has unified the heavyweight division and defended his belt against top 10 contenders. The same cannot be said for Deontay Wilder, not throughout those 10 defenses he had of his WBC title. Now I know of course Anthony Joshua could have rematched Vladimir Klitschko. That was down to Klitschko, he had the decision. If he wanted the rematch was there. The contract was there, AJ was happy to oblige it. So that rematch could have happened, but Klitschko decided otherwise, so therefore there was no rematch, meaning Anthony Joshua must have beaten him conclusively enough for him to decide that it was in his best interest to not get back in there with AJ once again. So that kind of just proves that Anthony Joshua is not someone who needs to tell everyone that he's the best heavyweight in the world, that he's of that level. Everyone knows, because you just have to look at his resume, the guys he's beaten, and that tells you all you need to know. Now interestingly enough, there has been a fight made for Joyce versus Carlos Takam. Now there was talk of Takam or Tony Yoka. I would have preferred Tony Yoka, but still Takam is a good opponent for Joyce in some ways. I believe that Joyce said he'd happily fight Anthony Joshua even instead of Alexander Usyk, because, you know, styles make fights, and perhaps he believes AJ's style is better suited to his than Alexander Usyk. Well, the thing is about Carlos Takam is he's a small guy, he's around 6 foot, maybe even under 6 foot, and he's looking to fight an Anthony Joshua, a Deontay Wilder, or a Tyson Fury, the top guys in the division, maybe Dillian White. Those guys are all taller, so I'm wondering, what does he gain experience-wise from fighting Carlos Takam? I mean, he does have an abundance of experience fighting top guys going through the Olympics and during his amateur career. Even in the professionals, he has accumulated a good number of wins over top opponents. I mean, his last win was against Daniel Dubois, and I know that that was around European level, but Dubois is a good fighter and he is developing very quickly. I mean, he's got back to winning ways and he's looking to go into a world title shot against Trevor Bryan for the regular title. So that was a great win for Joyce. I'm just wondering what he gained by fighting someone like Carlos Takam. Now, of course, he does have to fight fighters with different styles so that he's ready for that kind of style if it comes along later in the future. Like against someone like Andy Ruiz Jr. I mean, I know his style is not the same as Carlos Takam's, but he is a smaller, faster opponent, rough and tough, can take a punch as well. Maybe a fight with Carlos Takam could prepare him for someone like that, so if he's been in the ring with someone who has fought in a similar way, then he is able to navigate that fighter a lot better because he has experienced it in the past. I mean, it's just like David Haye when he fought Derek Chisora. He had Carlos Takam in sparring. He hated it. It was horrible because he was there pushing him back all the time, in his face, not allowing him to rest. And that got him ready for Chisora. Before that, down at cruiserweight, he fought a fighter called Fragamini, and Fragamini was someone who was pressuring him, pushing him back, constantly in his face, making things difficult for him. That was a difficult fight for Haye because he got cut as well, and it was difficult for him to navigate early on in his career, but gave him a good experience, and I would imagine he called back to that when preparing for someone like Derek Chisora. He had been in the ring with someone who has that kind of bullish style. Yes, it was down at cruiserweight, but still that fight with Fragamini gave him a good experience early on in his career. And of course, Joyce didn't have all that many options after hoping to fight Alexander Usyk, that going on because of Undisputed. And Now he's had to find an opponent to defend his European title. It was Takam or Tony Yoka. There weren't all that many options for him, and it seems like it will be Carlos Takam. The Yoka fight is one that will always be there, and I do want to see that fight down the line. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Pick your favourite subject and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.